Good afternoon to one and all. Welcome to the webinar, Evolving EV Charging Infrastructure in India. The event is organized by JMK Research, a boutique consultancy firm focusing on renewable energy and e-mobility segments. Now, coming to the webinar format, the webinar will consist of interactive discussion with our eminent speakers. At the end, we will have 15 minutes for Q&A session. Participants are welcome to submit their questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the webinar window. Now, as you all know, adequate charging infrastructure is a key prerequisite for adoption of EVs. Also, in order to realize India's 2030 EV ambition, development of a robust network of charging infra is imperative, for which it is critical to understand the different elements in the relevant market. So, to bring about an effective discussion today centered on this subject, we have the following agenda. Current status of EV charging infrastructure in India, growth of captive charging infrastructure versus public charging infrastructure, policy and regulatory challenges, technical and non-technical barriers, business models, and DISCOM perspective. Now, to speak on these points, we have an eminent group of speakers, and it is my pleasure to introduce them. Mr. Sandeep Bangia, Head EV, Home Automation and ESCO Business at Tata Power. Mr. Varun Chaturvedi, MD and CEO at Voltec EV Charging.
Hi, everyone.
Mr. Jasmeet Khurana, Manager at WBCSD. Now, starting off with our discussion, my first question is for you, Mr. Sandeep. What are the ongoing trends in the charging infra market? And could you shed some light on the growth prospects of this industry? So,
I'll answer your second question first, because that is slightly easy. You're asking what are the prospects for the industry? I think the only answer to that is the prospects are extremely positive. We are seeing a transition from the ICE vehicles to electric vehicles, and even if we were to look at a global lag of 5 to 7 years, then we are already seeing a huge amount of influx of electric vehicles in Europe, in China, and in Americas, and all of those. So, so if I were to look at typically, when most new technologies get adopted in the West or in China, they come to India a bit slightly with a 4 to 5 year lag. So if I were to look at that classic 4 to 5 year lag, then I can be very clear that this industry is looking up like nobody's. So we have to develop charging infrastructure. We have to develop also the charging ecosystem, and hence this is where the industry is going. Coming to the first part of your question, what are the trends? Well, I think the trends are not very different when I look at global trends as well. Fortunately for us in India, the lag which I mentioned in terms of technology, we have an advantage because we are possibly leapfrogging into the latest technologies. We don't have a legacy to go by, quite like any other country or whatever. So we possibly will get the best advantage of the new technologies. Example, all the cars that are getting launched are absolutely state-of-the-art new cars. The global launch few months back and India launch right here. Normally there is a huge lag, 4 to 5, 6 years lag, and still Indian market does not get the latest. In terms of trends in charging, I think currently the charging infrastructure that we're putting up, 25 kilowatt, 50 kilowatt, are pretty decent to start off with. But as I said, always keep saying that we are watching this space very carefully. uh, there have been trends which getting into 150 kilowatt, even 350 kilowatt charging. So I think if that uh, kind of chargers do come into the market, and if the market requires, the charging infrastructure providers will be more than happy. And in terms of the regular size of the chargers is one part, but the kind of chargers. So we are having the entire spectrum, charging for buses to home charging, and then let's say induction charging, in which the bus comes on a road and you don't even have to do a connection. So there is an induction charging. Those kind of things are being watched. We are watching that space very carefully, and once that space is slightly more ready, we'll be very happy to bring them to India. We are in touch with the global manufacturers of that sort. Yeah, I hope that answers.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Sandeep. Those were quite insightful remarks. Um, my next question is for Mr. Varun. How do you see the market evolving in terms of adoption of business models across different segments? And what are the associated technical barriers that needs to be overcome now?
Yes. So business model as of now, see, EV charging is totally driven by the EV itself. Okay. So on the EV side, right now the dominant adoption is going on the commercial or fleet segments, because personal segment penetration will be little slower. It is not right now you can compare both segments, but it's all depend on the economic viability. So for a fleet segment or any commercial operator, they have economic viability looking to the upfront high cost, availability of charging infrastructure, current available vehicle models, their range and charging time. So personal segment, if you go for a middle class segment, they won't, afford for 20-25 lakhs EV right now. But with the affordable tag like Nexon and others, you might be seeing the numbers. So it totally depends on your requirement, your available EV model. So current scenario is mostly indicating that adoption is taking place only, means 80-90% to the EV fleet operator. Even two-wheeler, three-wheeler segment, you can also see that. And driver for personal segment, it will take next 2 to 3 years, along with the new models availability, their affordable range, and a range in terms of price. I'm talking about affordable. Then higher range means currently vehicles are available with 150, 200, 300 as well, but they should come down in terms of pricing. Then people will more inclined towards the EV, but that personal segment will take next 3 to 4 years. Now coming to the business model for EV charging infrastructure. So if you talk about a viable business model, then you have to chase fleet operators, then you have to go for a commercial segments. But if you make everybody comfortable as a society, so you have to take a balanced approach, means develop a charging ecosystem, so that at least people should see some EVs on the roads. Either it's from personal segment, either it's from a fleet operator, but right now mostly on the fleet operator. So there is a, I think you have an agenda between captive and public charging stations. So captive are right now most adopted by fleet segment, looking to their charging time and their range of the vehicle. So all is moving around the available vehicle and the business model, who's going to use the vehicle. Then the personal segment, definitely they are looking, beauty of EV is that you can own a fuel station at your home charging. So they will definitely try to charge their vehicle home if possibility is available. Otherwise, their charging requirement is once in a 5 days, 6 days, looking to the range. Suppose you take a average range of 200 kilometers. So their personal segment user daily run is 30-40 kilometers. So they will come only once in a 5 days. So that segment go on a public charging station, but public charging station right now the utilization factor is quite less. So that is where the business model need to be a balanced approach, and it will totally driven by the current scenario, which is more inclined toward the commercial segment. Slowly it will go as a balanced approach by, I believe it should be 2024, 2025, when personal segment will also come to the that sales number of currently what commercial segment is having. So these are my views on the business model. Yeah.
Thank you, Varun, for sharing some interesting viewpoints. Um, Now we come to you, Mr. Abhishek. Um, Mr. Abhishek, are you there?
I think he's on mute.
Mr. Abhishek, you are on mute. You could just unmute yourself. Yeah, I think we can skip him right now, and we'll come to you, Jasmeet. Um, could you describe some of the underlying challenges and opportunities, maybe considering the policy and regulation, and which you perceive in the charging infra ecosystem?
Sure. I think first of all, let me just say that all of our attendees today, I hope that everyone is safe and healthy and kind of taking care of themselves and their family. So I think that's the first and foremost thing that we should all be kind of focused on today. Very quickly, let me, Akhil, thank you for having me today. Let me quickly introduce my organization and the work that we are doing, and then I'll come to the specific question. So I'm Jasmeet with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. We are a global not-for-profit membership-based organization of 200 of the world's largest companies who together account for about $8.5 trillion of revenue every year. The CEOs of these companies, so this is a CEO-led organization. So the CEOs of all of these companies come together under the platform of the World Business Council to create a sustainable world. And that's kind of our objective as an organization. We run several projects across different industries and sectors. On mobility, we focus on our project on mobility is called Transforming Urban Mobility, which is basically looking at three key transformations. The first one being decarbonization that we are discussing today. The second is digitalization and data. So how we can make transport more efficient, which will also be required to decarbonize, but also to improve access and to make mobility safer and to make it more sustainable. And on commuting behavior change. So even our own behaviors and behaviors of employees of companies and corporate mobility policies will have a big impact on how mobility is transformed, and we all need to work for that. Coming to the decarbonization and specific to charging, but before I come to charging, I'd like to first say that this decade is extremely crucial for India's transformation in mobility. In the next 10 years or so, we have the opportunity to transform or accelerate our adoption of electric vehicles. The difference between a slow transition to electric vehicles and a fast transition to electric vehicles will be tens of millions of additional ICE vehicles in a slow transition scenario, which will be kind of on the roads and will lock in significant emissions into the next 10 to 15 years, which is the lifetime of these new vehicles. So we want to make sure that the new vehicles being bought in this decade are electric and are cleaner and that's what will set the pace for the future. Coming to the opportunity first for electric mobility, I was looking at the statistics a few days back, and I saw that China's kind of public charging points in China were about 200,000 in 2018 or beginning of 2018, and now today they are 800. I think maybe around, if we assume 2 to 3 charging points per charging station, we are at about 3,000, right? And that's a 500x difference. So there is a huge opportunity, and even China, it's just kind of under 10% penetration of EVs, right? So even if we are under 10% penetration of EVs, we need to go from 3,000 chargers to say 800,000 chargers, right? So the huge jump that we need to make, and a lot of infrastructure needs to be deployed. A lot of real estate will be required. A lot of grid capacity will be required. A lot of kind of investment will be required. Financing will be required. A lot of things need to happen. And kind of our theory of change as a project, and we brought together in India companies with about 10 billion kilometers of annual mobility demand in the work that we do, with all of these companies saying that they want to move faster. And the focus being on fleet electrification, so ride hailing, deliveries, employee transport, those kinds of use cases, which are most attractive today from a viability standpoint as well. So we think, or our theory of change is that the mobility sector, which is all these fleet operators, car companies, and all of these people, need to collaborate with energy ecosystem, which includes the utilities and charging, but also the real estate. So these three sectors, mobility, energy, and real estate, need to really collaborate, because none of them working in silos will get this job done. So there is a lot of demand which needs to be showcased by the mobility sector for the charge point operators to put in the investments, right? Similarly, someone needs to put in the investments for grid upgradation, which need to be managed given the kind of load profiles and all of those things. And a lot of data needs to be shared on where this demand is going to be in our cities. Where do we need to put up these charging infrastructure? And I mean, if fleet operators and charge point operators and utilities are not collaborating, this is not going to happen, right? So we need all of this collaboration, but then also what's in it for real estate, right? So we need a lot of real estate, parking real estate, essentially, to charge these vehicles. And these real estate, I will kind of distinguish between public real estate and private real estate. If I am a kind of a real estate owner, and I have companies leasing properties with me for offices or residential, etc. Currently, I don't have a value proposition to put in charging, right? Unless I have a mall and I am expecting a lot of traffic, which is not the case in India. So we need to make these investments and this collaboration worthwhile, even for the real estate companies from the private sector perspective. But also from a public sector perspective, we need to make land and space available for this charging to be set up. So I think these three sectors together need to collaborate at every point. There's a lot of role of data in this. So we need to know where just charging needs to happen. We need to know how this is going to happen. But like, just to begin with, I think because we know, and Varun was talking about it, is the fleet segment where we know there is certainty of demand. We know there is economic viability because these are kind of highly utilized vehicles. So there, the collaboration between a fleet operator and a customer who's kind of using the mobility, and the charge point operator and the real estate, all these people kind of know each other and can kind of figure out the collaboration which is required. So that is where we need to start with. In terms of challenges, there are lots of challenges, of course, that we need to solve. But obviously, because there is an economic proposition here, most of these challenges will get solved for the fleet first, and then subsequently for private adoption as well. On the fleet side, I would talk about kind of employee transport. So companies looking to kind of provide buses and cars to their employees as one kind of key segment, which has some of kind of the larger companies in India, at least on the car platform basis, who are operating in this space. There's a lot of activity on deliveries, and our delivery companies going electric, using both two-wheelers and three-wheelers for now, but also increasingly smaller form factor 4 vehicles, and in the future kind of larger form factor vehicles. And thirdly, the ride hailing companies. So Olas, Ubers, Blue Smarts, all of these companies who all have kind of significant utilization of vehicles, and they know where the demand is going to be. They have a lot of data of how much charging requirements they have, where do they have them, and they can provide these kind of demand guarantees to charge point operators to get those investments going. And obviously these shared infrastructure, which is kind of the real kind of backbone of, at least in India, which will be the backbone of the charging infrastructure, apart from what EESL and REIL and all of these different organizations are doing on the highways and in public spaces. So this shared infrastructure, if it kind of starts to become available through apps to private kind of cars and private owners of vehicles, I think that will form the backbone of charging infrastructure in our cities, at least, if not on the highways. So that's something that we need to focus on. In terms of challenges, again, there is still kind of ambiguity on where do we, or who pays for what. I think that's something that one is kind of struggling with, not just in India but even globally, right? So if I am a fleet operator, say I'm a Lithium or I'm a Flipkart or someone, and I'm putting up charging or I'm kind of adopting vehicles, right now I don't need to kind of think about where my petrol is going to come from, but right now I need to think about where my vehicles are going to be charged in terms of location and space where they're going to be parked. Who pays for the charging infrastructure itself, who pays for the grid integration or the kind of grid upgradation that needs to happen. So who's responsible for what and who's going to pay for what? I think what we need are market rules and regulations, primarily from the perspective of kind of ease of doing business. Am I, as a fleet operator, if I'm putting up 200 vehicles, am I responsible to invest in charging infra as well, right? Or is a charge point operator who's putting it up on my behalf to charge my vehicles, can they use it for other operations as well? Where does the real estate owner come into this picture? So these are all questions which are still unanswered. A lot of people are trying to answer them on an individual use case basis. But I think we need more market rules, especially from power sector regulations, to say that grid upgradation cost will be socialized in such and such way. And that's not a responsibility of a charge point operator, because if a charge point operator has to pay for the upgradation of the grid, then that kind of their model becomes unviable. And if a fleet operator has to pay for charging and grid upgradation, their business model becomes unviable. So we need to solve these kind of structural challenges through market rules, which we're assuming that Ministry of Power, for example, will play a key role in. The second point, like I said, on land, I think on private land, there can be business models and businesses will figure it out in terms of how to collaborate, how to kind of make these things viable, and how to kind of share this infrastructure with the public, etc. But for public charging, we need urban local bodies to step in, which is what is happening globally, where cities play a very important role. In India, of course, municipalities are not don't have the kind of power and resources that a lot of global cities have. But urban local bodies need to play an increasingly important role in allocating land and kind of understanding how do we connect charging, for example, for three-wheelers or swapping for three-wheelers with the metro system or the public transport system. How do we place chargers in those locations? All of these real estate challenges are required to be solved by urban local bodies, or kind of just in general building bylaws, and those kind of things need to be structurally changed. And we need to think now from this kind of new infrastructure development perspective in all of these things. And the third thing, which is kind of gaining quite significance in India, is on swapping. There are a lot of organizations, especially kind of delivery fleets and ride hailing fleets, who find swapping as a great tool to both kind of increase utilization of vehicles, but also to increase driver incomes, which is also an important aspect of this kind of bottom of the pyramid, but also what most people in India use as mobility, right? So from that perspective, we need to make sure that that swapping is given an equal status, and there's an opportunity for that market to prove itself and grow. So I think those are the big kind of challenges and solutions that I've tried to kind of put forth, and I'm happy to kind of concede the floor and see if there are any questions.
Yeah. Thank you, Jasmeet. Those were some noteworthy insights. So my last question for this round is for you, Mr. Abhishek. So from the DISCOM's standpoint, what are some of the key measures that needs to be undertaken to enable seamless integration of charging network into the electricity grid. Uh, no, sir, it's the volume is quite low. If you can speak a bit louder.
Akhil, while Mr. Ranjan connects, there are some questions on the Q&A. I thought there are quite a few of them, if you just notice.
Sure, sir. I think we can take them up now.
Yeah, Mr. Ranjan is back.
Yeah, am I audible now?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for this, and sorry for this slight goof up. I hope my voice is completely audible now. So the point that you're trying to make is, what are the things which a distribution company should take care of to allow this? One is, of course, the readiness of the grid that is given. So one is the areas, the distribution network, which the distribution company is having, the low voltage network, the readiness of the same in terms of the existing ones, because we are not going to put up fresh wires on the system to accommodate something new. So one thing is for sure, as on date, what is the availability of the juice that should be brought forward. And this could be easily done through the GIS maps of the distribution companies. They have the live juice availability that is already there on the GIS map and the LV network. That should be enabled. Second thing is there should be a single point window or single window where any kind of dedicated EV connectivity should be handled. The connectivity of the EV is separate from any other different connections because of the managed charging properties. There has to be a dedicated EV cell, just like the companies have DSM and PAT cell or a solar cell or something. There should be a dedicated EV cell, and all the necessary documents should be put up on the website guiding the people. So, and third is there should be a very strict template, very clear template, which talks about what are the prerequisites of putting up a public EV charging infrastructure or a private EV charging facility within the households or semi-public areas, in terms of all the regulations, etc., simplified in a single piece of paper, so that people don't have to run from pillar to post to find out what is happening, where is happening. So information asymmetry in a nutshell should be removed, and that is the onus of on the onus of the distribution companies. Possibly in this digital world, everything has to be there on the website or the mobile app, and a dedicated single point window online application, joint site survey provision, and feasibility, how to make the infrastructure smart while vis-a-vis taking care of the supply code regulations of the respective state. When you grant connectivity, say in Delhi, for example, up to 100 kilowatt and below, you don't need to have provide a space for a distribution transformer substation at a location of the charge, but beyond that you need to. There is a requirement. So how can we optimally plan while we remain within the supply code ambit, while it is also very cost effective? So if it is a low voltage connectivity in Delhi, for example, you need not share the actual cost. It goes into ARR, and you pay a certain amount, which is much less than the actual cost. So and that way there are supports available within the supply code of different states. So this might be different for, say, maybe Andhra or Telangana, for example. So what the discoms need to do is, given the current state of the supply code regulations and the connectivity rules and the state EV policy, CA regulations, MOP guidelines, NITI Ayogs, DHI, all these things should be put up and shaped up in a single piece of paper or a single place, which should be available to the people very upfront. In a nutshell, I would like to submit these points.
Thank you, sir. That was valuable info that you have shared. So this brings us to the final round. That is the Q&A round. So we have a set of interesting questions for all of you, some of which are from the participants. The first question I would like to ask is, and this is open to all, what could be some of the potential financial or non-financial incentives for increasing private participation in the EV charging ecosystem?
I'm not sure about what the expectation on this is. So,
Is it they
so
want
government is
no
doing,
incentive or what?
yeah. So I was just wondering whether it's something to do with the FAME incentive which the government is offering, or
It could be central or state level incentives, so FAME or state policy.
okay. So no, I guess frankly, this is one space in which the government is doing a lot, and I really can't, you know, uh, put the uh, pass on that the government is not doing enough. In this case, I think the government is doing a lot. It is just that people have to pick up the baton and run. We are doing that. Varun's company is doing that, and I think there's a lot more can be done. Uh, though, of course, uh, there is still anxiety on behalf of the non-government participation. Really, when you go and ask people that yes, I want to install a charger, there is a problem, which are private parties typically try and create some queries, ruckus, and obstacles to ask a lot of these questions. They might be right in their own way because they want to understand what this is all about. But frankly speaking, there is no financial incentive that people like us are waiting for. We are putting up a charger worth 10 lakh rupees, and one more 10 lakh rupees goes for, let's say, setting up the electrical infrastructure, which I think Mr. Ranjan will agree. So I am not particularly keen on getting some 2 lakh or 50,000 rupees incentive for the charger when we are already putting 19 lakh rupees worth, right? So, but that's not the point. The point is that the government is encouraging, whereas the private sector is really a bit more conscious, and the private citizens really are anxious about what is this all about? Why are you putting it up? Is it safe? But there are no cars. Is it big enough? Is it future proof? तो वो सब questions पूछते हैं लोग, and we are perfectly okay answering them. I think we all understand that this is a very new concept, and people are curious to know. So part of our job is to educate them, and we doing that. We are doing that, and I think I can speak that on behalf of the ChargePoint operations very clearly. Yeah.
Definitely. I would like to just supplement your thoughts. You have put in the very correct thoughts. For example, in Delhi, the government of Delhi has put in place an EV policy wherein they are subsidizing private chargers up to rupees 6,000 per charging point or something in the EV policy they have already given. They have rolled out already a public EV charging tender wherein they have done a lot of things to attract private participation in putting up those charging stations in the public locations. You talk about concessional real estate availability. So they talked about 70 paise per unit, kind of, that is pay per use kind of. Otherwise, you have to pay for the capital real estate kind of thing. So fixed cost, whether somebody is coming for charging or not, is not there in that charge. So what I'm trying to say is the governments across the country, I mean state governments, they are trying to come up in their own ways in their respective EV policies. Now, the only anxiety I believe is, as was brought down by previous speaker, is in the minds of the people or the end EV user, as well as those who are putting up those charging infrastructure. Again, the chicken and egg story. So somebody says whether if somebody is putting up the private EV charging infrastructure, whether it is safe or not safe, whether it is going to suffice my range anxiety, how it is going to gel with my behavior in terms of mobility. And from the private side, the charging point who is going to put in over there, they are thinking whether if I put it over right now, what is the utilization rate? When do I make money? When is the a positive return coming in? I do know that there is going to be sink cost for me, but when does it turn positive? Now there has to be a mid path to it. That's what we are saying, that we are educating the consumer, telling them, and then equally we are trying to support the private charging operators to come in by giving them indirect benefits. What are the indirect benefits? So real estate should be at a lower cost. Your service charge could be a bidding parameter. You decide whatever you want to do. Then we would like to give you sites at such a location where people by default come in. So you should not have any problem of the traffic coming in. Third is education part of view. For example, all these public charging stations, two-wheeler and three-wheeler, as of now, four-wheeler comes next. So what we are planning in Delhi is both the private charging tender and the public charging should go hand in hand, so that people are assured that the charging happens outside my house, charging happens within my house, it happens at my office, it happens at malls and everywhere. So with that idea, both the tenders have to be going hand in hand, and that gives, or that is believed to give, some confidence in the eyes of the people as well as the private charging operators who are going to set up, to put money and install. Now apart from that, fame incentives, as we all know, is already there. Scrapping incentives for people who are going to buy the vehicle. For chargers, fame incentives are there. In state EV policy, they have additional advantage or incentives for, as I said, for the private chargers. So I think the things are in place, and standards are also being made so that there is a mass production of low cost LEV AC chargers also. That prototyping is going on right now. So why can't we have a charger which is within 10,000 rupee and below, where if you allow 6,000 rupee of rebate, so you have a charger of 4,000 rupee per piece. And then there will not be anxiety on the part of the private charging operator to sink in more and more capital. So I think things are happening, but only thing is there is a lack of the kind of capital. We can't compare ourselves with China as of now. I was in other meeting in the morning today. So we were saying that it can't be compared because they have altogether different ball game in terms of the capital requirements and the capital they can infuse. In our case, we have to take baby steps, but then very certain steps. And that's what we are trying to take. But yes, the interaction with the private CPOs should continue, and to find out it's a continuous feedback loop. So they will come together and come back saying that, okay, this is what the problem is, you should give this also. So basis that, it is a continuous learning loop. Over to you.
Just quickly add to that, I think what we really need, and the government is doing, kind of building out the skeletal infrastructure through the FAME, etc. I think what we really need to do and think about, like from a policy perspective at least, is how to attract private investments, right? Because that is where the scale will actually come in. So for that, I think we need to be bold. Of course, India has a lot of priorities in terms of where it allocates resources. But it would not be a bad idea given the kind of role that electric mobility will play in the kind of national imports bill, in the manufacturing strategy, in like all sorts of things, right? So it is not a bad strategy to think of how to make private investments viable through either a viability gap funding or some other mechanism to incentivize early deployment of charging infrastructure. It is a strategic sector. Most countries view this as a strategic sector. So it makes sense to invest more, to get more private investment flowing in, to make it viable for, I mean, when charging on a standalone basis, if you have to pay for land and if you have to pay for reputation, is not viable anywhere in the world, right? And it starts to become viable if you kind of increase utilization, if you provide some incentives, if you kind of take other steps, if a mall kind of pitches in and says, my customers will come and park and shop with me. You know, all of these things need to come together for charging infrastructure to become economically viable. OEMs need to come in and say, we want our vehicles to be sold, so we'll invest in charging infrastructure, which is what is happening around the world. So we need to be more ambitious to get private investments in. We need to kind of make sure that all of these different players are collaborating. We need to make sure that from a government perspective, and this is not a very huge sum of money. Like if you think about just the viability gap funding, if that could kind of come in as a policy measure, even if it is on a kind of bidding mechanism where the government says, let's put up 10,000 chargers or 50,000 chargers, and we'll get bids, and whoever is asking for the lowest viability gap funding, they can go ahead and put those kind of chargers in, whether they use it for a semi-public use, which is kind of shared, or they use it for public charging. Kind of having an open policy, more incentives to get private sector involved, make it worth their while, I think will be a good idea, given the kind of strategic importance of this sector.
Right. I think we have a lot of questions concerning the standardization of charger specs across different EV models. So if you can throw in some viewpoints around that. I mean, it's open to all.
So let me answer this. See, we have a standards mostly on the charging side. One is lower voltage, one is on the higher voltage. Lower voltage is Bharat DC or GBT based protocol, and higher voltage you may see CCS2 or CHAdeMO. So that is where government categorize. Okay, and then AC chargers, of course, Bharat protocol AC01 is there, and type 2. So I think there is not many differences or any confusion is there. Only you have to have at least two machines at a public charging station so that you can cater all the EVs. What most of the time I feel we compare our Indian market with European market and US market. So there only either CCS2 is there or CCS1 or CHAdeMO is there. But in India, one added standard, that is Bharat protocol, is there to cater the low voltage EVs, because low voltage EVs cost is quite cheaper rather than comparing high voltage CCS2 based EVs. Same way, chargers are also costly. It is not only EVs is costly, chargers are also costly. So there are only these two major standards, are two or three you can say. One is Bharat and CCS2 and CHAdeMO. On the higher voltage, all right now available vehicle are on CCS2, and low voltage like Tigor, E-Veritos are there on GBT. Two-wheeler, three-wheeler segment, as mentioned, Jasmeet, that it is totally on the business model. So battery swapping is better option because they don't have any fast charging facility as of now. So they will, suppose if it's a fleet operator or any delivery company, they have to run more than 150 kilometer or something higher range. So they have to go for a swapping. So these are the current prevailing standard on the charging, and government clearly mentioned. So like Abhishek also mentioned, that everything is available. Only it's a matter of informations. Most of the people don't have access to the information. That's why they asked these questions: what is the standards, whether the it's a economic viable and all those things. So lots of challenges is there, but yeah, government did their work. They given a policy framework, every state having some policy, standards are available. Only it's a matter of deployment, and deployment will be as per the business case, but it's there. Yeah.
Yeah, there's another question for Mr. Sandeep. What are your views, and this is from one of the attendee, what are your views on the battery swapping model in the car segment, considering the facts that there are inconveniences like charging time and lack of space?
So we are seeing globally all the four-wheeler manufacturers are actually having their own battery chemistries, battery form factors, and battery layouts. So those uh, batteries, which are ge- coming as a part of the cars, do not uh, lend themselves to a battery swapping. Okay, uh, because each battery is looking, and form factor is very different. So just imagine even the smallest battery, let us say Tata Nexon of a private car. I'm not referring to 22 kilowatt of, let us say, Tigor. It's a pretty huge battery in terms of size, and it is very unwieldy to pick up that battery and put it in a charge swap station and do that. So globally, we are not seeing this as a trend that is emerging. That cars are actually coming with their own batteries, with their own form factor, with their own chemistries at times. So the cars typically will land up getting charged at a public charging station or a home charging station. But two-wheeler and three-wheeler, which is in a two-wheeler, it is about 2 kilowatt battery, which is like a very small tiffin box kind of a thing. You can pick it up from the scooter and put a charging swap. And same thing is for a three-wheeler. It's not much bigger than a small briefcase. Yeah. So you can pick up the battery and exchange it in a battery swapping station. So it is largely in terms of the convenience and wieldiness of the battery size and the form factor, which is likely to be more uniform in a two-wheeler and three-wheeler, but not so much in case of four-wheeler. That is the reason why in case of four-wheelers, the batteries and the charging is meant to be for home charging or a public charging stations. When it comes to the charging times are very high. Yes, the answer is of course the charging times are very high, but I think this is the reason why the charging stations are put up in very logical locations where you anyway spend time. So you don't have to really go out of your way and spend that 1 hour to charge your car. So like I'm sitting in my house right now talking to you, there is a car down below which is getting charged. I go to my department store, the car is getting charged while I'm shopping. So those are the kind of places that the chargers are installed. And hence, the additional charging time is not really a concern. And in any case, I heard Varun mention that you have a personal charger in your house. So every evening when you come back from work, you plug in your car into your charger, and while you sleep, the car gets fully charged. This is quite like our mobile. So we do it for our mobile phones very often. We don't go somewhere and spend half an hour to charge it. We do it wherever we get a chance. Chalo. I go to my friend's house. I said, boss, charger hai kya? Chalo, charger laga ke baat kar. And overnight I do that charging. So we do not spend time on charging. So in fact, it is better than a petrol pump, because for a petrol pump, I have to go 2 kilometers distance. It takes me about 5 minutes. I wait in that queue 5 minutes and come back another 5 minutes. 15-20 minutes lagte hain. That is only for refueling my car. But in this case, I'm not doing anything special. I go to office, I put it on charging and do my work. I come back home, I put it for charging and I sleep. So people are learning to make the charging more efficient. And we do not really require charging battery swapping stations for cars for this reason. I mean, I just hope this is something that can resonate with most people. 80% of the car charging for private cars happens at people's homes. This is not just in India. This is globally. People like us have installed about 4,000 chargers at people's homes, so that they may not really require to come to a public charger. But wherever you need it, whenever you forget charging or whenever you want to travel intercity, you're traveling from, let us say, Mumbai to Ahmedabad or Ahmedabad to Jaipur or whatever, that is the time you will need public charging. That's it.
Right.
Just
Thank you,
to
Mr.
add,
Sandeep.
just to add
Yeah.
Sandeep comments. See, most of the time we required a top up. It is not always a full charging. Right now, you might be seeing that whenever you go to a fuel station, how many times you do a full tank. Most of the time you take 500, 1000, something like that. So in this charging scenario also you required a top up, and top up can be done quite faster rather than thinking of, oh boss, इसका तो full charge 2 घंटे में होगा. So that is not a scenario. If you right now we are operating lots of fleet operator. I am talking about fleet operators, not on the personal segments. They are also topping up. Whenever they are coming up, they are getting a chance to get charge their vehicle, so they are topping up. In the personal segment, within a 10-15 minutes you can top up it, and maybe 50-80 kilometer you can get a range with higher range vehicle I am talking about. So it's also on the mindset and the user behavior. Right now most of the discussion is going on thinking we have to charge from 0 to 100% in 1 hour for Nexon, or 2 hours in Tigors or Iveritos. But that is not a actual practical condition, except maybe in few fleet operation, because they have to run lots of they have to cover lots of kilometer. But personal segment, I'm 100% sure it will be always a top up. So that is easily covered at any charging station within 10 to 15 minutes, maximum 20 minutes. They can get a range of 80-100 kilometers. Just to add on Sandeep comments. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Abram. The next question is for Mr. Abhishek. Is there a possibility of having a universal tariff rate for EV charging across all states?
Okay, so the retail tariff in India is the domain of the respective SERC, and you have multiple SERC, so uniform tariff really doesn't look like possible. If answer is no, because the different SERCs will have a different outlook to the same. But yes, one thing is for sure that we may look forward to EV TOU rates. That slab rate for the time of use or time of day could vary from state to state, but we look forward to the EV TOU or TOD rates. There are two objectives to it. One is to incentivize EV charging through low cost power during the times of the day when the grid is loaded on a lower side. So that is both in the interest of the EV user and also in the interest of the grid. And second is to incentivize charging during the green hours. So whenever the grid is more green. So that TOD and TOU rate might be uniform across, uniform in the sense the TOD concept might be uniform, but then the slab rates of the TOD, TOU will also differ because the load curves across the states, the green composition, the loading of the grids all differ across the states. Hope that answers.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So we can have one.
I'll just add on, Akhil, if you're okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I'll add on to what Mr. Ranjan said. See, fortunately for us, Tata Power is also a DISCOM, and we are also a charge point operator, right? So while we deal with the EV tariffs, which are differential across the states, we have put up a uniform charge for across the country, because the service charges is something that we can, take it in different measures. And the reason for that is very simple, that customers would like it very simple. It is just like, you go to a charging station, you got to be sure that what is the kind of charge that you will pay for it. So that is the reason we have kept it uniform for our customer, while we'll end up paying different tariffs to different DISCOMs. That is purely meant for customer convenience and getting used to for the customer. But yes, I think Mr. Ranjan is right that this is controlled at the state level, and there is a huge variability. Though we wouldn't really want that variability. Delhi is almost the lowest, and somebody else is the highest, and the range is almost double. It really doesn't make sense. Why would somebody charge double the price for the same power for the same segment usage? But anyway, I think somebody out there is deciding, which is fine.
Now, one more thing is if you decide to charge at your home, so you avoid paying service charges otherwise which you
Yes,
would pay
yes.
at your public charging
Public
location.
charging means there is a service charge for because somebody has to pay for the infrastructure.
Yeah, so then what happens is why, as you were also saying that 80% of the charging happens at home. One of the major reason is that you do not end up paying extra charge. You pay only for the electricity part, and that too also due to the TOD, it will be the very low. In Delhi, for example, if you have 4.5 rupees a unit, off peak times it is 80% as of now also during May to September. And if you charge at home, you pay that only. You don't need to pay any parking charges or say at you go to NDMC area, they'll charge you at 10 to 11 rupees a unit. Composite tariff I'm talking about. But if you charge at your home, you could charge as low as maybe 4 rupees or even lower. You have you have an option of getting a separate EV metered connection also in Delhi apart from your existing connection. So though that has to be, because this is incentivized, that has to be hardwired or sealed as per the commission's order. Commission has directed us, the DISCOMs, to ensure whatever it takes to avoid any arbitrage due to the low tariff. So otherwise, 11 rupees on one hand and 4 rupees on the other, it really doesn't. It does
Makes sense.
make a lot of difference here. So people are sharp enough and they are going for it.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you. Yeah, we can have one last question, and this is another question from an attendee. What is the typical break-even utilization level for a charging station to be viable? So open to.
What is that? Say that again. Sorry.
What is a typical break-even utilization level for a charging station to be viable?
Oh, it'll take a long time for a public charging station because there are hardly any cars. So if you tell me how many cars will come, then I'll tell you this answer. But yeah, really speaking, broadly the mathematics works around 15 to 18%. 15% is a good benchmark. 12 to 15% is a good benchmark. So if the utilization is about 15%, which means out of 24 hours, if the charger is occupied for about 3 hours in a day, then you can hope to make money. You still don't, you're not sure. But today it's not even 1% to 2% really. I'm not talking about fleets because fleets is very different ball game. Before
I think his question is that how much utilization he should target to get ROI, faster ROI. So just to add on, you correctly mentioned, Sandeep, that right now it's a totally theoretical driven, okay? Nothing is proven because on a public segment, your capex cost is totally variable. Means charger cost is fixed, but the upfront electrical cost, then land, location, lots of variables points are there. So if you get a utilization, suppose that is quite, aggressive, 8 to 10 hours, that is 30-35%, then your ROI somewhere for 4 years, something like that. But I'm telling you, it's a theoretical. It's not proven. Lots of things need to be, done on the field, and field conditions totally vary at each point within a city, even not a state, I'm telling you. So it's a theoretical questions, but yeah, the more your utilization, the faster your ROI. So that you have to ensure whatever investment you are making, if you get a higher utilization, 8 hour, 10 hour, the faster your ROI, that is directly proportional with that. So that is, I think, answer your question, but it's still not proven.
This brings us to the conclusion. I hope everyone has some interesting takeaways from today's session. Thank you, all the panelists and attendees. Have a good day.
Right. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye bye. Take care.